I think players have every right to push for moves. The whole idea of loyalty, it is such an odd concept in football because when the roles are reversed, clubs will pluck you and sell you off to a different club, sometimes without you even knowing
Absolutely.
it. Right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't even think a second about it if they had to do it.
Today we're going to do a special event. This is a video. We're being videoed. We're being filmed. And we're going to be talking the business side of the game of football with Des Corkill.
Pleasure, as always, to be here. I might have an opinion or two.
And as seen on TV already, Keishnan Sundaresan.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
And we're going to be looking in a way, a lot at player power. The idea of player power and money in the game of football and whether it's deserved or not. But I want to start off with a framing question, umbrella question, which is that the EPL, the English Premier League, in the last transfer window spent more money than all the other major European leagues combined. And one player in particular, Alexander Isak, after a great drama, moved to Liverpool for £125 million. And before we get into contracts and player power, etc., first of all, is that sustainable? Is this a sustainable business? Are we talking? Is it a business?
Firstly, it's an obscenity. That's one of the first things I'll say. The amount of money that's being spent on football at the very top level is obscene. £125 million on a single player is an obscenity. I cannot get my head around that. The average price, the average family earns in Anfield, around where Liverpool is, they earn £45,000 to £50,000 per year. And now we've got players being paid £40,000 to £50,000 per week, individual players. So I can't get away from that. I must make that statement up front. And also, I think it's to the detriment of football right the way down the scale. Grassroots football is utterly obliterated. You look at levels of football throughout the world, and funding is a major problem. That's number one. Saying that, yes, it is sustainable for these elite businesses, because they generate that much income from the TV rights, from the marketing rights, from the opportunities to go and play abroad, as we've seen. Liverpool came to Hong Kong, Arsenal came to Singapore, etc. So it is commercially valuable as long as the TV companies continue to pay. So in that circumstance, and with the new stadia as well, they become realistic businesses. It's why so many clubs go into debt to try to get into the top flight so they can get these unique riches. So to answer your question shortly, despite the earlier diatribe, for the top elite clubs, yes, it is a business.
Okay. So, Keish, we're in Malaysia. Does it affect us here in Malaysia?
I mean, of course it does, right? I don't even know where do we begin with this, but there is genuinely a growing sense of inequality in football. It's been there for years. It's just taken on a very, very aggressive shape or form in recent times. I give you a simple example. You look at the amount of money that the Premier League have spent, and then you juxtapose it to the amount of money that La Liga clubs in La Liga or clubs in Serie A have spent, right? That paints a very bleak picture as it is. But to paint a bigger picture, go and look at the amount of money that the championship clubs spent versus the second-tier clubs in the major European league. That's where you will see the proper disparity. Because right now, the wealth is being not just concentrated, I mean, it's concentrated in the Premier League as it is, but at the same time, it's being concentrated in English clubs a lot as well. So a lot of the championship clubs who go to the Premier League, get the parachute payments, then come back down and continue to spend big in the second division, whereas second-tier clubs all across Europe are nowhere close to that amount of money. And this, I mean, this growing level of inequality doesn't just exist in Europe, it also exists in different parts of Asia. But what I mean by it is when a lot of the global attention, when a lot of the global funding primarily goes towards Europe, primarily goes towards England, it also takes away access for a lot of the clubs in other parts of the world.
1,000% right.
To tap into those resources as well. And that has created such a difficult position. I mean, I give just another quick example as well. At the recent Club World Cup, right? The winners got close to a few $100 million.
But it's £2 million per point, $2 million per point.
Correct. So the power there wasn't just in the club that won the tournament, but think about what it also did for, let's say, Egyptian giants Al Ahly,
Correct.
who are already exceptionally dominant in Egypt over the last few years. All of a sudden, they go to the Club World Cup and they back tens of million US dollars and bring back home. And that disparity has just multiplied by 3 or 4 times as well.
In that country.
In that country.
The J-League winners get $1 million. You get $2 million a point. Auckland City, their turnover was £500,000 last year, an amateur club. They took home $3.5 million. So that will just mean the disparity, as Keisha's rightly said, just mirrors right the way down. You're going to have JDT situations all over the world.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's take this down then and focus now on the players. The individual players and their rights, perhaps, as players. And if we look at the situation with Alexander Isak, for instance, who recently got stolen, I'm not quite sure what you'd call it, from Newcastle United and went to Liverpool. And he made it pretty clear that that was what he wanted to do. He really pushed for that move. And there is a story, I don't know how true it is, that Marc Guehi over at Crystal Palace, on the other hand, was being very professional and did not push for a move and did not get that move to Liverpool as well. Should players be able to push or be badly behaved and get what they want?
I think they should. I think players have every right to push for moves. I mean, the whole idea of loyalty, it is such an odd concept in football, because when the roles are reversed, clubs will pluck you and sell you off to a different club, sometimes without you even knowing
Absolutely.
it, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't even think a second about it if they had to do it, right? So why should the players then be expected to project this grand level of loyalty that is not reciprocated in one way or another? The loyalty from the players towards the fans, I get it. They want to be respectful. They want to appreciate the support that they've gotten. But there should not be any unreciprocated loyalty between a player and an institution, right? If a club has the ability to pluck you out and sell you out at any given point, like a lot of them actually still continue to do, then a football player, if he wants to move, I don't think it's that much of a problem to say that he should be given the opportunity to make that
loyalty.
move.
Loyalty.
£125 million is the loyalty bit for Newcastle. So again, Cam, I always accuse you of this. You always talk about just the elite level. Yeah. Football is so much more than just the elite level. The Isak and the Guehi situations are very, very minor. I'd love to see what somebody playing for Bolton Wanderers decided to go on strike for. Let's see how well he's treated. Let's see if he is able to force a move. He'd just be forced into the reserves. His career would be over. So, yes, players have the right to do that. Isak is in a minority of about 3 people in the world with the capacity to actually say, I'm going on strike to get my club £125 million and double my fee in 5 years. But he's in a real minority. Again, you're taking the exception to try to prove the rule. The rule is there to protect players at all levels. In Malaysia, we have still 11-month contracts, I think, for most players. And that's a major problem. We'd love to...
As opposed to like a 5-year...
As opposed to a 5-year contract, because there is no resale value, or very little resale value, apart from a small number of players. And so that's a problem. So you've got to protect the players with their contract rights. And yes, they've got to say, listen, I don't like it here, or I'm not happy here. I'd like to get a move. And they've got to be able to talk to their employers. Only Isak is being able to actually say, okay, it's worth my while, and the club to say, it's worth my while selling you for a huge profit, enormous profit, for us to get you off our books.
But let's also, I mean, as much as we say that players deserve these rights and they should have the ability to move and dictate what their life or their career trajectory is like, but it's also slightly complicated in a sense where, because reports were coming out of England about Isak wanting to leave, but at the same time not necessarily wanting to sacrifice a lot of the bonuses and potential payouts. So some of them don't go as far as submitting a genuine transfer request where you abandon all the existing bonuses. Almost like, let's say you work for in a corporate institution and then you tender your resignation. You've got 3 months notice, and let's say you resign in January, February. Even though you work the last year, but if you leave in February or you resign in February, chances are that your bonus payout in March, you might not get it, right? It's pretty normal at times. But football players want those things, so sometimes they don't go as far as submitting a transfer request in to the club, which then absolves them of all the financial benefits that they would otherwise get.
Because I don't think I've really... Have I heard of football players just saying, I resign?
People have gone on strike before. Who was the famous one at Chelsea? The Dutch defender who just sat on his contract. Winston Bogarde sat on his contract for 5 years, earning 45,000.
A hero to many.
So precisely. But it's the wrong example. So you can understand why the typical football fan, probably the older football fan as well, is getting well cheesed off with some of these players holding them to ransom. And the old loyalty bit. We're not going to be as supportive of every player who comes to us. We're not going to hold them to our bosom anymore because they'll disappear at the first moment. Marc Guehi's a great example. Everyone says, oh, what a guy, what a fabulous guy, terrific. He didn't want to go on strike. That's not a bar you want to have set. That's not a bar that you want. Oh, he was good. He wants out of his contract, but he didn't do anything bad to do it. Our whole value system is being challenged by what's going on at these top level clubs.
Can I just ask, Des, back in the day, in say the 70s or even the 80s, in Liverpool, players were being paid by comparison. I mean, big name players, likes of Kenny Dalglish, etc., who are world famous. What were they being paid in comparison?
I used to live in the same neighbourhood as Graham Souness. My parents were both teachers. We were middle class. Graham Souness lived just down the road in a much nicer house, but they were livable. Bob Paisley used to live literally in the road behind me. We were not well off by any stretch of the imagination. We weren't poor, so they were part of a community. That's how they used to earn. That was in the 70s and the 80s. Back in the 60s, Jimmy Hill's days, they would be getting the bus to work. They would be getting the bus to go to training, etc. So we've gone from there to yes, being established members of the community, to now stratospheric kinds of money. But again, only at the very, very top level. Only at the very top level.
I was about to say that. I mean, Jackson Irvine, who plays for St. Pauli in Hamburg, still takes public transport to his training ground. So if you go to different parts of, not even the world, different parts of Europe, where the money involved in football is a lot more within the realms of our imagination, it's still pretty normal in a lot of those places. But you've now, we spent so many years trying to run away or protesting or arguing against the creation of the Super League, but it is already there. It's already there in the form of the exclusive top-tier leagues at the moment in Europe, where the financial disparity and the sort of money involved is something that we cannot imagine. So you will never get an environment in the Premier League where a player is staying behind the house of a supporter, or a head coach like Bob Paisley stayed behind the house of Des. You'd never get that, but you would perhaps get that in lesser known leagues or smaller countries where the money is a lot more within the realms of our imagination.
Keish, so clearly from what Des has just said, he's stuck in the past. And
there's good things in the past, and I think we've gone too far away. That's my problem with the elite level.
Right, so there you go. And which brings us to the point then, the fans. Should the fans then reframe the way they look at their relationship to players, their relationship to the club, and not have these perhaps unrealistic expectations? I don't know if this is on the same topic, but Trent Alexander-Arnold goes off to Real Madrid. A lot of the fans are very upset. Yeah. I mean, perhaps that's just a thing of the past. That's just like, we should just drop that, and now we should accept. It's not personal, it's just business.
I mean, I don't even know where to go with this, but I have a lot of problems with the way football fandom is today. It's just, it gets on my nerves. The abuse that football players get. I mean, just to understand the situation, right? Football fans expect football players to be loyal to their club and to be loyal to them. But the moment they make a single mistake in a game, the amount of abuse they get, it's just ridiculous. Harry Maguire was getting bomb threats at his house. Yeah. His family was being abused on social media. But if Harry Maguire decides to, in the middle of some contract dispute with Man United, strike and say that I want to leave the club, they will also attack him for that. So it's the mismatch in expectation is just insane. I get it. football has become, and for generations and for years, football has become an emotional outlet for a lot of people, right? So a lot of emotions that you experience in your day-to-day life, you take it out via football, whether it's via chanting at the grounds, whether it's via shouting abuses to the refs, or whether it's criticizing an opposition player. But there comes a point where you've got to also start to look at these football players as not just an asset,
as human beings.
As human beings. So as human beings, they don't just have a right to movement from one club to the other, from one nation to another, from one city to another, but they've also got emotions. They've also got feelings. They've also got thought processes, and all those things need to be respected and acknowledged. And I think the way fans look at football players right now, there is a major disconnect, and it's also contributing to how clubs treat them. It's also contributing to how players react. Just a couple of days ago, if you remember, there was a very popular Liverpool Twitter account, right? Or X account. I hate that word. But there's a very popular account that posted this graphic of
the Darwin Núñez,
the two Liverpool players that left from last season, and the two players that have come in to replace them, right? Just to compare and say that, quote unquote, we have upgraded on them. Mo Salah responded to that and saying, why can't we just appreciate the players that were there last year and appreciate the players that have joined without necessarily criticizing the ones that have left? Because even the players are feeling it at the minute. They say they have support from the fans, but the moment they make one mistake, everybody comes for them.
In my day, football was a lot cheaper to go to. My cheapest ticket at Liverpool is about £1,500. For 19 games.
For 19 games.
Okay.
Right.
I used to be able to get in for a fiver, literally. So that whole walk up and pay culture has disappeared. You've then got the social media element where the abuse used to be at the ground. And yes, it used to be, but it was a swear word that you'd go out and you'd have a pint, or you'd go out and the game would be over. There wouldn't be any social media follow-up. The social media element, the follow-up on what happens, that's where so much of the really bile, negative stuff is kicking in within the last 20 years. This didn't used to exist. Yes, there used to be an odd comment in a newspaper 3 days later. I thought Ray Kennedy was lousy, or whatever. That was about as bad as it got. So I think that there's so many changes have gone on. But for me, football is just incredibly expensive. I don't know whether, many of people, Azram, one of our guests, regularly goes to Anfield. He spends a fortune to get to Anfield. And it's that kind of...
Because he's a true fan.
No, he's he's a wealthy enough to go true fan.
But all the way from here.
What I'll tell you is the people around Anfield who are on that £50,000 a year cannot afford it. And so football at that elite level has been taken out of the reach of those who can afford it. And that to me remains a huge problem that I cannot get over. Anfield is like this TARDIS that's just come in from outer space and has been dropped into one of the most rundown areas of Europe.
Wow.
And there's many good things that come from it. Of course, there's many good things, but it's just so out of kilter, so out of whack.
Yeah, but you're talking about Liverpool as a thing that exists in a city called Liverpool with Liverpudlians around it.
Yes,
which from our perspective, all out here in Malaysia is like not really a thing, if you know what I mean.
But I'm still blown away 25 years on having moved to Southeast Asia, how so many people know more about my club than me. And whereas you ask them, tell me about Kelantan, they couldn't tell you a thing about Kelantan.
Yeah, but it's a vacuum, Des, right? It's a vacuum that was created in the mid-90s in Malaysia by a corruption scandal.
Correct, absolutely.
And it collided with the growth of the Premier League here. And when there is a genuine trust deficit in the local product and a foreign product comes in and fills that gap, and you build relationships with your family through that product, it carries on for a generation. I mean, that's how I became a United fan,
right? We're now 30
right?
years down the line.
Yeah, but the trust deficit remains.
Yes.
The trust deficit in Malaysian football remains.
That's another topic.
We're running into a different topic, but it's the case, yeah.
But it certainly does. I mean, I talked to casual... I mean, not like I really know the Malaysian game terribly well, except through what you guys tell me. But if I talk to football fans about Malaysian football, the first thing they'll say is anyway, that's a different story.
Correct.
So let's as we come to an end, I wanted to focus on players. I mean, the transfer window is closed, so perhaps we don't think about these things for a few more months, and we don't mention the name Fabrizio Romano for a few more months. But the players themselves, then. So I want to ask you one question first. I don't know the answer to this question. So if I'm a player in a Premier League team, not a great one, and if suddenly it's decided that Burnley wants me, am I on the bus to Burnley the next day, even though I didn't even want to go?
This is a weird one, right? Because obviously I agree that there needs to be a better framework to protect the players and their rights and their choice, essentially, for their own career. But at the same time, if you want the environment to be a little more stable and not volatile, there needs to be a better framework, because it can't be as simple as just, okay, players now have the ability to submit a resignation letter, serve a 3 months notice and exit at the next window. Because if you don't get a buyer that matches the price, then it's a bit difficult. You can't expect a club to just drop their asking price, having spent a fortune on that. Some examples of a framework is, for example, in La Liga, every single player who signs a contract with a La Liga club, there is a mandatory release clause. A mandatory release clause. Every single one of them. So it's, of course, sometimes a lot of these release clauses go to an amount that's just unreasonable, right? I think Jude Bellingham's release clause is like €1 billion or something along those lines, so it makes no sense. But that's one example of a framework as well. If you go by a lot of the American sports model, in the NBA, of course, right? Players don't really have a choice. Like clubs just trade them from one franchise to another. Sometimes the players, an individual might want to stay at a specific franchise, but there's some other business acquisition at the top level, and without them doing, the next day they wake up and they find out on the news that they've been traded. So yeah, there needs to be a better framework, but at this point I don't know. I'm not sure. How do you create a framework that does not contribute to a volatile player movement environment, but at the same time respects and recognizes their rights to also join or exit an organization? And
also their right to participate in the riches of the sport. These are the entertainers. These are the actors on the front of the screen. That they should get. They should get as much as they can possibly get.
Put a simple example, Cam. United just spent close to 250 million pounds or euros in the transfer market, and this comes a few months after they cancelled lunches for everyone working at the club.
Yeah, but
so
get a sandwich somewhere.
And it's not like the player wages were cut; they're still making astronomical amount of money. Yeah.
So wages. Typically now I know Deji keeps saying we're talking about the elite level, but we are talking about the elite level, okay?
Yes.
Wages constitute a higher percentage.
So on some clubs, particularly in the Championship, wages constitute something like 115 to 120% of turnover.
Oh, okay.
They're going into absolute negativity. Daniel Levy, who's just been got rid of at Tottenham. Tottenham's wages to turnover ratio was something like about 46%. So in a business capacity, Levy was fantastic for Tottenham Hotspur, and quite a reasonable proportion. Liverpool's is up to about 76 or something percent.
That doesn't sound healthy.
It can't be healthy. But if you're generating these kind of revenues, but that's where you call it player power. I call it management stupidity. If you pay over the odds for somebody when you haven't got the income to bring it in, that's just poor management. But because of the TV income coming in, because of the increased valuations on football clubs now, they can afford to make those kind of gambles. Lower down, you can't. You make an error like that, you go 115% of your turnover to wages to turnover, you're in real financial trouble and your club disappears. Again, a very divisive topic. Is salary cap the way to go then?
No. I hate salary caps.
I think absolutely 100%.
Really?
Absolutely.
That's what they do in America.
Yeah.
Because in America, the system favors the franchise owner, the bosses. All the money, as much money as possible, gets funneled toward them.
You use the word franchise, and that's where the Premier League is going. Because the more and more American owners that go into the Premier League, the closer we get to them having the voting power to actually exclude everybody else. This has been where I've seen this happening from the first American coming in. I clocked it a long time ago. Yeah. They see that as that opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I think as kind of as Kish was saying, that actually, the Super League already exists, and it's the Premier League.
To a large extent, I think it is. It's a very sensitive, controversial subject. Obviously, football. I mean, when the whole Saudi Arabia takeover of Newcastle came in, Newcastle fans were heavily in favour for it, even though there were criticisms outside. I mean, United fans have been protesting the Glazers for God knows how long now. You've also got the whole Man City fiasco at the minute, which
they'll negotiate themselves.
They'll negotiate themselves out of it as well. So. You know, on one hand, you've got salary cap. On one hand, you've got the existing mechanism, which is called PSR, which is also a flawed system because clubs like Man City have allegedly fabricated sponsorship figures to try and amp up the amount of money they can then go on and spend in. Yeah, so there's all sort of accounting tricks that can happen behind the scenes. But for the bottom line is this: whatever mechanism football adopts to try and deal with it, it cannot be a single country effort. It can never be that, which is the same argument we use in Malaysia as well. I think a salary cap is very necessary in Malaysia. But the moment Malaysia adopts a salary cap, for example,
JDT can't win the Champions
JDT
League.
can never compete with anyone else in Asia because everybody else in Asia are playing on a completely different level. Similarly, if let's say La Liga, in the interest of sustainability, adopts a salary cap, there is no way Real Madrid and Barcelona can ever compete with your United City. And so if it's going to happen, it's got to be coming right from the top. And the moment we talk about anything coming from the top, that's where I end the conversation. Because we know nothing will ever happen.
We've just seen the Club World Cup coming in, and so that is the riches there. Here's the next threat. I know you're trying to close this down. Yeah. Last night, there was a meeting, I think, in UEFA to decide whether or not AC Milan versus Como could be played in Perth, Australia.
That makes perfect sense.
I don't know the answer yet. If that kicks in, then we have major issues because that will be the dam broken. You'll have Man United versus Man City as a major event, not as a Super Cup or whatever, but as a league game taking place, I don't know, in Bukit Jalil. That's a problem.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But that's coming. That's coming, and that was a discussion last night in UEFA.
Right. Well, a lot of food for thought there, and I just want to say, thankfully, at Just for Kicks, we don't have a salary cap, and wages to income ratio is through the roof because we're just we're that popular. So, thank you very much, and we'll see you on the radio.